There we go. Anyways.
So first off, nice hat.
Thank you. I want to say, I know you were talking to Vince a lot about exercising. Do we have to stand up?
No, we can.
I'm joking.
Oh, okay.
Cheers. I've been walking around all this week and my legs are ready to give out.
You want to sit down? We can do it.
Sure, I'll go grab chairs.
Let's do this campfire style.
That's fine. Well, while he's getting out, tell us what you do on the show.
Well, I play Big Macintosh, and I play Dr. Who's, and I play Goldie Delicious, and I play like 20 other characters.
Yeah.
They all have one line.
No, too much.
Yeah.
Rufus on Littlest Pet Shop, right?
Sunil on Little. Did I play Rufus?
That's
as well?
right. That's right.
Rufus. I might have. I think I played about 70 different characters on Littlest Pet
That's
Shop,
right.
So.
Out of the 35.
I totally got the name wrong and botched it. Oh, no.
I got chairs.
All right, cheers.
Campfire style. Dewey, you don't get one.
You get to stand up.
Hey, that's
Which,
fine.
speaking of this guy, I don't know if you remember Midwest Brony Fest from a few years ago.
I remember. I've been there 2 times.
Yeah, I believe it was your first time because I happened to be there as well. I stopped you in the hallway to get a wonderful little recording because this gentleman right here wondered if you remembered him from the first Nightmare Nights.
I did not set you up for this, I swear to God.
This is all starting to come back to me now.
And thank you because I crushed his hopes and dreams with that one little
Excellent.
message.
What did I have to say to him?
Basically, it was a mock interview. I was saying, "Oh, Mr. New, it's a pleasure to meet you." It's like, "Do you happen to remember a certain Clayton Roberts? He had the cowboy hat." And you're just like, "You know what? It's kind of ringing a bell." You pause for about 3 seconds. You're like, "Nah, I don't remember." And I built this up for over a month.
No, it was really funny. Basically, what it was at the first Nightmare Nights, you and I just happened to be at the same room party. I was just sitting at the couch watching an episode of Dan Versus, and you just happened to sit next to me, and we just started talking. I thought it was super cool.
Yeah, right on.
And
No, I don't.
Really?
I like him.
You don't mean it, right?
But yeah, we know you do a bunch of voices for the show and all that, but what do you do personally? Like, what are some of your interests, hobbies? Like, are you a fan of history? Do you enjoy architecture?
I do. I enjoy architecture, and I enjoy meteorology, climatology.
Oh, really?
Okay, cool.
I'm fascinated by space. One of my favorite things every night, I follow like the Voyager spacecraft, and I love its tweets because it tweets about how far away it is from the sun. And I find like it's just just a list of astronomical units how far away it is. But I really find that fascinating every time I get the
Oh, that's really cool.
those kinds of things.
Because because I've been doing podcasts for God knows how many years. Most interviews I hear from people, especially with My Little Pony show staff, they just talk about the show. So the listener doesn't get to know the person behind it, because most of these fans that come in here assume that he just does work for the show. And that's it. He just exists to put a face to the voice.
Well, I mean, when you think about how much I'm on the show, over 6 seasons, I've done, I think it's something like 30, 35 voices.
Right.
A lot of those, so that would be 30, 35 episodes.
Yeah.
But a lot of those voices are on the same episode because sometimes they'll bring you in for one and then they'll have another thing there. So it's 2 in 1, so it's maybe 20, 25 episodes.
Right.
It takes us 1 day to record an episode. So in 6 years, that's 20, 25 days of work.
Wow.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, when you think about how much of my mental energy it takes to go to work, I mean, I read it ahead of time. I make some decisions ahead of time. I do some prep work, and then I go to the studio to do it. Every episode takes me a day or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Depending. But really, that's it.
Yeah.
In 6 years. It's not a whole lot of time and energy devoted to this. I spent way more time and energy at conventions.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, right.
Because
Okay.
each convention is 3 days, plus travel days, plus it's all day long. The recording session is anywhere from 1 to 4 hours, and these things are 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
These are 3 days.
I feel that pain.
So it's like, over the course of it, I've been to 30 of these things now. So
Yeah.
I've actually spent way more time
Right.
with fans
I actually had a
than
question.
I have been in the studio. And ponies, anyway.
I just had a question about the recording process itself. Is the way Friendship is Magic is specifically...
Is that a splinter in your finger?
I guess it is.
I'm sorry.
Go on.
That wasn't the question, I promise. basically, how exactly is it? Is it like everybody records in like a group,
Yeah.
a group room, or is it just individual lines one at a time?
More often than not, it's everybody's in a group, except that some people are not in the same city. People like Tara, who plays Twilight, records out of Los Angeles.
Okay.
But the rest of us, for the most part, are horseshoe with glass on one side, and
Gives you an opportunity to bounce off of one another.
the
Makes it
horseshoe
weird.
is incidental, by the way. We do
I was
we do the horseshoe shape for most shows. It's not just
okay.
It's not
Just
the
makes it
horseshoe.
more genuine.
Likely story.
But one thing I want to ask
You
you.
should have said a you.
I swear this will be the last one about Milo Pine because
That's all right.
I'd like to know more about you personally, if you don't mind. But the episode with when I can't remember the name of the episode,
Shoot.
but it's where Big Mac dresses as
Brotherhood
Orpheus. You did an amazing job in that one, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Because I'm a huge fan of voice acting. Have been since I was about that tall. The emotion you managed to put into that episode, just especially that final part, I was just like,
Oh, especially, yeah.
it was incredibly difficult to tell Peter knew from the character. So I listened to because I listen to a lot of things. As I said, I'm a huge fan of voice acting, and I know a lot of voice actors personally from the Dallas area. But whenever they can get me to lose that, or they make me lose my sense of immersion, kind of. I'm probably wording it horribly, but I get so immersed into it that I no longer just see myself watching a show.
Right.
It's like I'm
You're not
there.
thinking of the actors themselves. You're thinking
Exactly.
about the characters
Yeah,
themselves.
It's
rather
such a
than-
powerful scene.
And I've been wanting to tell you this for a while, but never had a chance to. And what you did with that episode was absolutely wonderful, and it's one of my favorites, especially that little bit.
Thank you very much.
Because it was kind of a situation with the little sister and all that, and didn't turn out nearly as well, unfortunately. But still, just thank you for putting so much depth and emotion into just a character that just says "yep" every once in a while and talks.
Thank
Yeah.
you for
Thank
that.
you.
The very first audition, the very first exposure I had to the character, they gave me some yups and nopes to do because they wanted me to do that for the most part, and they told me that for the most part that's probably what he'll end up saying.
Right.
But they also gave me this monologue, which has never appeared in the show, just something that was just written for the audition, because they wanted also, they said maybe sometimes we might use him as a sounding board for Applejack to come to get advice or something, and it was written really in a sort of, well, little sis, if it were me, I'd go down here and do this thing, and that kind of, down-homey wisdom sort of thing. And so for me, I always approached the character as though it was all hidden wisdom. Every yup and nope was always about subtext. It was always about trying to communicate something.
It meant more than just
Yeah.
yes and no.
Absolutely. For me, there's always been that wisdom and that deep part of him.
Right.
So, and even then in that first episode, he doesn't come out saying yup and nope. He has a whole
Yeah.
conversation with Applejack right out of the gate before any yups even happen. So by the time it sort of rolled around to Brotherhood Social, for me the depth in the character was already really well established, and so Dave Polsky and I had a conversation at one point about that episode, and Dave Polsky, who wrote it.
Right.
And the whole thing about dressing up as Orchard Blossom was a way for him to feel free to talk, because he's a character that doesn't always feel free to talk, or the character that feels like he doesn't have to say much to communicate a lot. And so I really enjoyed that part of the arc, that it sort of gave him this mask that he could use to communicate. But ultimately he failed to communicate using the
Right.
mask because he wasn't being particularly honest with his communication through the mask. And that moment at the end, for me, I really wanted it to be good, because it's the moment where he takes the mask off but continues to communicate, and finally communicates honestly, finally communicates cleanly. And I thought that was really beautifully articulated in the writing, and I really wanted my performance to support it. So it's
Honestly,
It really did.
listen, you did an outstanding job. That is one of my favorite bits in the entire show.
cool.
and it's something that I constantly go back and listen to. So thank you again
thank you
for
very much.
your articulation and just how much thought you put into just a red pony.
Red pony.
Yeah, but most people don't really think about it. They're just like, oh, it's just a kid's show. But every
Totally.
voice actor wants to bring in their own take on something. They want to make it their own because voice acting is seen as not a real form of acting by some people.
Well, I disagree.
Oh,
Well,
of course.
From what I've talked to with most voice actors, at least in this area, that have become big names in Funimation and all that,
Yeah,
they're usually treated as,
yeah. No, that can happen.
yeah, mostly because they do anime and stuff like that, but just there's a lot of actors they've dealt with personally that are in the big times Hollywood consider voice actors as just, oh, you just stand in a booth, you talk, you get paid.
Yeah, the number of film actors I know that have tried to come and get a voice job, and they have this moment of realization where they're like, oh,
This is
this
what
is
you do.
way harder than I thought it was.
So much different.
You're not allowed to move that much because the mic will pick it up.
You can move as long as you're not wearing loud clothes.
Exactly.
Right.
But you have to be careful
The
with
problem I think a
everything.
lot of film actors have with it is they get in there and they're so trained to, like, it's all in the eyes with film, right? So
Yeah.
they're trained to kind of keep everything right in here, and it kind of comes off in animation as really low energy because it's all right in this pocket right there. They half whisper everything they say usually on film.
Yeah, that's true.
And you can't really do that and keep the energy up. And even with a character like Big Mac, who's very slow and low, it's like part of the challenge with him is to say, well, how do you make that yup? How do you make yup live? And if you're just going yup, or
That's it.
film version, yup, there's nothing there for them to animate if you just do
Yeah.
that. So you got to give it something that'll make it come alive. And film actors, I think, a lot of the time have a lot of problems going. Really, I can be that big. Now, my problem, of course, is I then go the other way around, because I do film acting as well. So I forget that I have to actually pay attention to what my body is doing in a film audition. I get in there and I'm like, and they're like, whoa, no, that's way too big for the camera.
What kind of work did
Anyway,
you do for?
Try this. I have to be the last question.
Yeah. What kind of work did you do for not animation stuff and like actual
I've
acting?
done tons of stuff. Usually just like a day on this or that, sometimes more if I'm lucky. Like did like a straight to TV sci-fi movie called Lost Treasure of the Grand Canyon. Last year I did a Jim Henson project for Lifetime called Turkey Hollow.
Wow.
Just recently shot a couple of things that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about just yet. And,
We understand.
But,
NDAs.
Gotcha.
so, but yeah, no, I mean, I think I have something like 60, 70 on-camera credits.
Oh,
Wow,
nice.
that's
Very
awesome.
Check out
nice.
my IMDb page and follow me on Twitter at @ActorPeterNew.
Oh, you did.
Trust me, we all
I was gonna say, I already
Anyways,
did.
thank you, Mr. New, for taking the time to sit down
My
with
pleasure.
us.
Thank you guys very much.
And we'll no longer take any more of your time, but again, thank you, and I hope you have.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to try?
Did I say
on
need
this
to
hat
borrow
real
one?
quick? But thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the con, and
Thank you, guys.
hope you have a safe flight back. So,
you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Take it easy. Bye, everybody.
It's really nice.